La Dame aux Camélias has become perhaps the most popular of my works. It represents many things. I think for me, as all ballets which are important, they are never simple to be read like a kind of soap opera. Because I think the idea in this story, the idea of the sacrifice of love, a love which goes so far as unto death, in a sense, for La Dame, it has also symbolic meaning aside from the actual story that we see as a ballet. It represents, of course, also a challenge for a company, because it is not only a work for a single ballerina, but a work for an ensemble. It demonstrates that a company can produce a new form of dramatic ballet, which is absolutely not a ballet of the 19th century. And the structure is absolutely not like the structure of the 19th century. The story is from the 19th century, but the structure, in a sense, is very modern. Also, the staging of Jürgen Rose is very simple. So, in a sense, we see many aspects of the story at the same time. And this is a great challenge for a company, and something which is interesting for a company, because we have a whole range of interesting personalities. And then the principal roles of Marguerite and Rarement also can be interpreted in so many ways. The role was originally made for Marcia Haydé, where we, in a sense, through our work together, created a text. But just as the text of Shakespeare can be read in so many different ways, and suddenly through a young woman have a completely different meaning. And this I find fascinating in this work, because if we were constantly trying to reproduce what I originally made at the end of the 70s, it would be quite boring. But what we want to do is to constantly, in every single performance, recreate new this story as if it has never been told before. And this is the fascinating thing, and why I find it interesting that now several companies do this work, and the type of dancer who could be Marguerite or who could be Rarement can be quite diverse. And this is, for me, this makes the work for me not work, but extremely interesting. I think the choice of Chopin for me is absolutely ideal, because there is a parallel, I think, between the two sides of Chopin, because Chopin was very important in the society of Paris in the 19th century, and there was a certain frivolity, gaiety in the music, which represents this side of society. At the same time, there is in Chopin, in his Polish origin, and in the fact of his own illness, there is a sadness in the music. There is a sense of a more shadowy destiny, which I think expresses exactly the main essential themes of this ballet. I have in my career worked very often with Jürgen Rose, particularly in the beginning of my career. And it was interesting for us in the beginning of the 70s. There was a big change in the theater, I think, also depended on the work of Peter Stein in the theater, where we suddenly realized that there was a magic in realism, that before, when we made a peasant costume, it was nothing like a peasant ever wore. And suddenly in Per Gynt from Peter Stein, a peasant was wearing a peasant costume. And this was a big influence on Jürgen Rose and on myself, to discover in the detail, the precise detail of a period, the theatrical strength. We went through a period, for example, Casse-Noisette is extremely, has an extreme sense of magic realism. But then, as we progressed through Le Lac de Cygne, La Belle au Bois Dormant, we came to La Dame aux Camélias. And suddenly, as I read the roman of Alexandre Dumas fils, there was a completely film-like technique which he used of the story being told absolutely not linear, but from several points of view, sometimes at the same time, always in memory, so that we needed the possibility in the scenery to be able to flash back, to change, to blend one scene into another. And so we arrived at a great simplicity that the ballet actually, and this was my original idea, the ballet takes place during the Levant, for all of the things which were left of La Dame aux Camélias, this very sad feeling that we have at a personal, of personal things, and that the room basically always stayed the same. We are always in the same room. Our point of view changes according to who is thinking, feeling, telling the story. And this was a very important discovery, I think, or development for both Jürgen Rose and myself, in the sense of continuing a kind of story ballet with a completely new and different structure. If one considers, or if, as some people say, La Dame aux Camélias, c'est le Giselle of the 20th century, of course, it's a great compliment to me. I take it very humbly. I think it has to do with the fact that just as a great ballet like Giselle, which lives, I think, because of the extraordinary concurrence of music, dramaturgy, dance, drama, all fit together so well. I hope that this might be the case with the La Dame aux Camélias, and also the fact that the role of Giselle, like the role of La Dame aux Camélias, can be interpreted so many ways. She can be young, she can be extremely young, she can be a dancer who is nearly ready to retire. It's also possible. It works in many different ways, and perhaps this sort of universal possibilities which the ballet provides are perhaps parallel to the possibilities of a great ballet like Giselle.